Last fall, up on the ridge where I live alone, I did something I still can't fully explain. I saved something out there, something that isn't supposed to exist. It was hurt bad, bleeding, hiding under the roots like it already knew the world had decided it was a monster. Hunters had been after it, trying to kill it, or maybe just prove it was real. I never asked which. I should have called it in, but I didn't. Instead, I cleaned its wounds, gave it water, and lied straight to the men who came looking for it. I'm not proud of what I did, but I'd do it again. Because for a few nights after that, I saw what it looks like when something wild decides to trust a human. And once you see that, the woods never sound the same again. My name is Claire Whitlow, late 40s, former ranger, then field biologist. I live alone on a ridge in a small cabin. It's quiet here. Most mornings start the same. I wake before the light makes up its mind. The stove clicks as the embers cool. The rafters creak after night frost. Coffee first. Always. I grind just enough for one mug because I hate waste. I set my palm near the iron, count a few heartbeats, and listen to the creak down the slope. If I can hear it, the day will go fine. If I can't, I pay attention. I step out onto the porch barefoot. The cedar boards are cold and familiar. The air is sharp and honest. Early fall, wet pine. A thread of smoke still in my flannel from last night's fire. The sky is a dull gray that usually lifts before noon. I take a sip, breathe, and let the world settle into place. I keep a weather log. My husband, Mark, started it years ago. He wrote neat numbers and short notes. I kept it after he died because writing the morning down felt like talking to him without forcing it. I opened the book and put today's line, 38 degrees, light fog along the creek, no wind. I underlined no wind twice. No reason, habit maybe, or nerves I won't name yet. The cabin has its own set of sounds. The kettle's rough whistle, the door hinge's bad note. The pen click when I check my repair list on the wall, nothing dramatic. Even the silence has weight up here. I fix small things because it keeps my head clean. Patch a tear in my field jacket. Run the knife on the stone until it whispers. Oil the hinges so the door closes quiet. Tidy work, steady hands. Helps me keep away from thoughts that don't solve anything. On the windowsill sits a photo of Mark in his ranger uniform, smile big, sun in his eyes. Next to it, a sticky note from my son Eli, don't forget your vitamin D, Mom. The steam has blurred the writing, but I keep it stuck to the same jar. It reminds me someone out there still expects me to take care of myself. Around mid-morning, I radio the station for the forecast. I don't need it. I do it anyway. A young voice answers, polite, professional. They ask if I'm still up here alone. I say, not alone, just quiet. They pause like they're searching for the right response. We wish each other a safe weekend, and that is that. Ravens argue over the clearing like it's theirs, and I'm on a lease. Their voices rattle the trees. I eat toast over the sink so crumbs don't invite mice to stay the winter. The noise keeps the place from feeling empty. It's a trick that works better than it should. By midday, I'm at the southern fence line pulling wire tight. That fence always finds new ways to fail. I hum under my breath. Nothing you'd call a song. Sap gets on my hands. I split a knuckle on a post and wipe the blood on my jeans. Wind shifts. A cold note slides through the timber. Not colder air. More like a tone. It sits wrong in my ear. I look at the ridge. Trees hold steady. No birds lift. No branches sway. Everything looks normal. I tell myself it's just a weird gust and go back to work. That's what I do when a thing doesn't fit. I put it to the side and keep moving. Mark died on a late-night drive back from a shift. Blacktop was slick. The kind of storm that can't decide if it's rain or ice and punishes you for guessing wrong. The quiet after he was gone felt like an animal laid down on me and forgot to get up. The city made it worse. Too much noise that didn't mean anything. I came up here because the creek and the trees don't lie. People do, even when we don't mean to. I do too. I say I'm fine. I say I like the solitude. Most days, both are true enough. Eli calls on Sundays when he can. He's 26, a firefighter, calm but tired when he talks. We mostly talk about weather, his work, and if I'm keeping the place together. Last time he said, "You're safer up there than we are down here." I didn't answer, and he didn't push. That's how we are. His wife Mara sends boxes sometimes, coffee, socks, pictures of them and their dog. I open them slow. It reminds me someone still thinks of me. Tom from town drops by once in a while with fuel and news. He said hunters are already moving in this year, some not from around here. I wrote it down and didn't think much of it. That evening the ridge goes strange. Not storm still, a held breath that lasts too long. I follow fresh deer tracks along the east trail. Midway through a muddy patch the prints end. Not a jump, not a turn, just gone. I crouch, press my palm to the churned earth. The weight in that mud is heavier than a deer. There's a faint iron smell, like old blood mixed with creek water. The logical part of my brain mutters about trucks chewing the trail last week. It doesn't match what I'm seeing, but logic wants an out. I let it have one and keep walking. At the old logging road, I spot a brass casing close to the ditch. Habit makes me pick it up and rub the dirt off with my thumb. Looks like 30-06. Not shiny, not corroded. Recently fired. It sits wrong in my pocket. Halfway home, I toss it into the brush, and on purpose don't mark where. Season must have started early, I tell myself. That's all. The day dies slow. I close the shutters, set another log on the fire, lock the door for the second time just to feel the latch catch. Then wind moves through the timberline in one long breath. It almost shapes a word, not one I know. The front window hums once like a thin coin and goes still. I write unusual calm, maybe pressure shift in the margin of the weather log. My pen stays in my hand too long. I put it down, pick it up, put it down again. The mug on my knee goes cool. I count to 100 for no reason, I'll admit, and finally kill the lights. That should be the end of the day. It isn't. I lie in bed and listen. The creek keeps its beat. The ravens are done. The house settles. Then nothing. Not regular nothing. The kind of quiet that removes itself, like someone muted the woods. I hold my breath by reflex. A single heavy step lands on wet needles outside the porch. One step, then nothing again. No retreat. No second foot. Just that one undeniable weight living in the dark with me. I tell myself it's a black bear testing the edge and changing its mind. I keep telling myself that until my jaw hurts from holding it closed. Morning gives me the usual chores, and routine drags me forward. I make a list, fix gate hinge, reseat camera 2, check creek bend. I swap trail cam cards and see trees swaying in a wind that never reached my cabin. A branch bends like something leaned on it, then straightens. No body on the screen. Glitch, I tell myself. Bad batteries. Cheap sensor. I say it out loud to make it real. It doesn't help much. Down at the bend, I find drag marks in the gravel and dark specks that the creek should have washed away if they were old. Boot prints too. 2 sets, one fresher than the other. Mixed in with them, something barefoot and too large, stride too long, heel sunk deep like the weight sits low. I know what I should do. Measure, cast, log it clean. I do none of that. I stand there with my hands cold and stare into the trees, half expecting a human voice to pop out and tell me I'm an idiot. Back in town, I ask Tom if he's hearing more about early hunters. He shrugs, which means yes. Outsiders with cash, decent boots, asking for big sign. He won't say the word. I won't either. We both know what we mean without giving it air. He says, "Be careful." I say, "I am." It sounds thinner than I like. I go home, tie a better knot on the gate, sharpen a blade that didn't need it, fix a bootlace I should have replaced last year. Small jobs to make the ground feel solid. By late afternoon, the ridge starts holding its breath again. I try to ignore it. I can't. I sit on the porch with the mug and the radio off. The creek speaks. The woods do not. By dark, the feeling has moved from the trees into my bones. I do one more slow walk of the clearing, then shut myself inside. The stove ticks. The hinge sings its bad note. I open the weather log again and add a small mark only I would notice. A dot. It means pay attention. I don't write why. I fall asleep late and don't stay there long. A low sound pushes through the timber at some black hour. Not a growl. Not a person. It sounds like a chest trying to form a word. My empty mug on the table vibrates, a thin ring in the dark. The window hums once, then goes still. The sound stops. I stare at the ceiling and know 2 things at the same time. I am safe in this exact minute, and something near me is not. I don't call anyone. I don't reach for a camera. I sit in the chair by the stove until the gray shows up in the window and turns the room into a place again. I open the log and only write the basics. 38, Fogget Creek line, no wind. I underline no wind again and close the book. That was the last morning I told myself it was all nothing. The days after didn't explode, they just tightened. I kept my routine the same: coffee, fence line, weather notes, Sunday calls. But small things began to slip. A spoon, not where I left it. A boot scuffed when I hadn't worn it. The quiet started arriving on schedule. Dusk, then again around 3 in the morning, like it had a plan. Easy to blame age, distraction, or mice. I did. Until the first shell casing turned into 2, and the same set of tracks began looping the same path. Creek, old landing, alder cut, and that shallow cave under the torn roots I swear I'd passed 100 times. One night the forest went dead quiet fast, like someone cut a wire. Not the honest quiet that falls when a hawk coasts over a clearing. A quiet that made the hair on my forearms stand up like grass under a gust. I sat up in bed without choosing to and held my breath so I wouldn't miss anything. After a long minute I heard it, one heavy step on wet needles right outside the porch. Then nothing. No second step. No retreat. Just the long fact of that single footfall living in my house with me for the rest of the night. I told myself it was a bear testing the edge of the clearing, then changing its mind. That story fit for maybe an hour. After that, it felt like I had lied to myself, and we both knew it. I checked the trail cams the next morning. I keep 5 of them in a loose ring just off the cabin's edges, tucked where they won't catch a sun flare. I swap cards, replace batteries, log timestamps like I am still on payroll. The footage showed trees swaying in a wind that didn't exist in my log. A branch bent slow as if something heavy eased down and then got up again, but there was no body attached to it. A blur in one frame had weight to it, the way a shadow at noon should not. I backed through each clip like a student in a lab, telling myself the sensors were glitching, the batteries were cheap, and the cameras were the wrong tool for the job I wouldn't name. At the creek I found drag marks in the gravel near the slow bend, where salmon like to pause and make a plan. The water there had a darker tang, like old iron, or a penny held too long in a warm hand. Boot prints, 2 sets, one older, one new, mixed with something else. Bear, too big. The stride too long to be a joke. The heel deeper than a human's, like the weight sat in it. I should have taken a cast. I should have measured. Instead, I stood there with a stick in my hand and looked up and down the creek, like the answer would walk out in a jacket and tell me what to do. I did what any stubbornly rational person does under the thumb of doubt. I checked all the batteries again. I realigned the cams with a little bubble level like I was prepping them for a class inspection. I rewrote the timestamps in a notebook to see if I had drawn a pattern by accident. Then I went into town and asked Tom about hunters. He shrugged in a slow way that says, "This is not news." "Early season," he said. "Outsiders with money and decent boots." He'd heard a rumor in the diner. A couple of guys flashing cash for tips on where the big sign was. He didn't say the word. People almost never say the word. I didn't either. We both looked at the floor like it might tell us the right way to laugh at something that wasn't funny. Back home, I tied a better knot in the gate line, sharpened a blade that didn't need sharpening, and fixed a bootlace I should have replaced last fall. All those small fixes like armor plates. I slept with the radio on low, not for the station, but for the company of a human voice falling in and out of mountains. 2 nights later, near midnight, a low sound came from the tree line. It wasn't a growl. It wasn't a moan. It was a chest trying to build a word it didn't have a mouth for. My porch mug vibrated, a shallow ring of coffee making thin circles. I held my breath. The sound pressed against the cabin like weather that knew my name. The glass hummed a brief, scared harmony, then stopped. When it was over, I sat there with my hand around an empty mug and felt something in me crack in a way that didn't hurt yet. I wrote nothing down that night. I didn't want to make a mark I couldn't erase. Over the next week, time shortened and lengthened in rude ways. Days felt normal until they didn't, and nights learned new tricks. The quiet arrived before dusk with irritating accuracy, and came back like a clock at 3 in the morning, as if something was making rounds with a schedule. I stopped pretending it was random. I still didn't name it. Tracks appeared and reappeared along a loop that began at the creek, crossed the old landing where loggers once stacked giants like bones, cut through the alder stand, and ended in a place I had never paid attention to. A shallow cave hidden under a web of roots where the hill had slumped decades ago. The first time I found the place, the entrance looked like shadow inside shadow. If I hadn't been following the pattern, I'd have walked past it like a person walks past their own face in a dark window when they don't want to see themselves. Spent brass kept showing up in fresh places. One shell on a stump I had cleared last spring. 2 in the ditch at the spur road. The metal was not old enough to hide. Someone was hunting near my home. Not deer. Not bear. I could feel what they were hunting by the way the silence skirted the edges of the clearing, nervous and watchful. It made me angry in a clean way, the way you feel when someone touches a sleeping child with the wrong kind of hand. I found a tuft of hair snagged high on an alder branch. Dark, coarse, longer than any deer, thicker than any black bear I ever skinned. A small clump of blood had dried where it ripped free. I lifted it with a twig, and the smell hit before I could decide what to do. Wild and metallic, not rotting, more like the salt of sweat after fear. I told myself I'd bag it, send it to a lab, do the thing my training told me to. Instead, I slipped it into the pocket of my jacket and buttoned it like something worth protecting. I didn't think about why that felt right. I just did it. By the second Saturday, the gossip in town felt different. Men at the counter with maps they didn't fold right. Strangers who didn't wash their boots before they walked into the diner. Cash crossed palms like it had a stink, and everyone either pretended not to notice or pretended to approve. Tom said a couple of out-of-staters had been sleeping in their truck by the river and asking questions with smiles that didn't reach their eyes. He said be careful in a tone I hadn't heard from him since the fire, the summer my boy was small. I said I'm always careful. It sounded thin in my mouth. After the first frost, I followed the loop again and came to the root cave at dusk. Breath fogged in front of me without any breeze to push it away. The ground there was a quilt of sign layered on sign, large tracks, the kind that make you measure your own foot and feel like a fraud. Knee prints near the entrance, deep and deliberate, not a fall, more like a person easing down to do something tender. There was a sharp tang metal and old blood and wet dirt. I crouched and let my eyes adjust. In the root shadow, something shifted. Not a trick of light, not a limb creak, a shape moving on purpose but trying to be small. I froze, the way a child does when someone walks into a room that holds a secret. Breath visible, shallow, irregular. My heart worked like it had a job to do, and no proper tools. Then, near the back, an eye opened. Dark, wet, watchful. It didn't shine like a cat. It drank what little light there was and kept it. I did not run. I do not know why. Maybe because running would have insulted whatever was trying so hard not to frighten me. We looked at each other for a long time that may have been a minute. I didn't blink first. Neither did it. The feeling I had was not fear. It was something like embarrassment, like walking in on someone bandaging their own wound. I backed away slow, my hands open at my sides to show I didn't mean a thing that could be mistaken for a thing. Outside, the world felt tilted. The creek's sound came back like it had forgiven me for something I didn't do. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat by the stove with the radio off and the window cracked to let in the cold that tells the truth. I took the tuft of hair out of my jacket pocket and laid it on the table. I didn't turn on the lamp. I looked at it in the kind of dark that still shows an outline. I could have called someone. I knew exactly who to call to turn the next week into a parade of trucks and lights and loud, smart people with scared hearts. I didn't touch the radio. In the morning, I took a small tin, tucked the tuft inside, and slid it into the back of the cupboard behind jars I only open when I'm sick. I wrote nothing about it in the log. I wrote wind light, frost at creek line, jays relentless. I kept my pen on the paper long after that, and then drew a small dot in the margin that only I would understand, meant I had crossed a line and couldn't uncross it without lying to myself in a way that would make me smaller. 2 days later, I packed a small kit like I was going to splint a hiker's ankle. Water, clean cloth, a field dressing I carried out of habit, a small bottle of iodine so old the label had peeled back and curled. I waited until the quiet began to gather in the trees like it always did, and then I followed the loop The air by the old landing was colder than the air by the creek. The alder stand held its breath. When I got to the root cave, I crouched and said nothing. Breath fogged. Mine, another's. The ground around the entrance had been disturbed since yesterday. A shallow bowl of earth like a body had tried to make itself fit into a space too small. I could hear a low, steady sound, not a growl. The sound of pain being endured like weather. I slid the kit forward slow, one glove at a time, so nothing looked like a fast thing. Inside the shadow, the shape shifted toward me a few inches, then stopped. The eye found me again. The pupils didn't gleam, they held me, and in them I saw the kind of intelligence that makes your justified fear sit down and listen. I put a palm against my chest. It wasn't a brave gesture. It was the only one I had. I kept my voice soft and low and said, "I won't hurt you." The words felt smaller than the moment, but they were all I had that could cross the space. I dipped cloth in clean water. My hands shook. The iodine's cap stuck and then gave, and the smell rose like a memory of a clinic on a hot day. I scooted a little closer on my knees, cold seeping through fabric into skin. My body told me to back out, and my chest told me to shut up and do the work. The first wound was a deep gouge along the outer thigh, not a clean cut, a tear where something had caught and pulled. Old blood, then fresher. Something had tried to bandage it with leaves and mud, not stupidly, just without options. I lifted the edge of the makeshift dressing slow, and the breath in the cave hitched. I said, I know, and felt like a liar for saying it. I poured a thin line of iodine and it ran into the channels where skin had opened like an ugly river finding an old root. The smell of it mixed with the smell of iron and earth and fur that had not been brushed by a human hand ever. I worked in small motions, steady. I cleaned, I pressed cloth, I wrapped. I didn't try to see more than I had to. It felt wrong, like looking under someone's shirt while they slept. A sound came from the shape, low and not meant to frighten. It was a word without a word. Thank you lives in that kind of sound. The eye stayed on me. I kept my head lower than you would with a person because it seemed right. When I had done what I could without pretending I knew more, I slid water closer, not offering it, just placing it where a hand could find it without a fight. Outside the cave, a branch cracked in that careless way men crack branches. Voices, male, close enough to know they could be heard and far enough to believe no one could answer back. A joke that didn't land. A rifle bolt cycled. That dry clack that says someone wants to feel power for a second. The breath in the cave changed to something between panic and resolve. I met the eye and shook my head once. No, not them, not now. I had seconds. I thought of the radio. I thought of the phone in town. I thought of the chain that starts when you call in something you can't explain in a way that sounds sober. I saw the trucks and the men who bring ladders to the sky and nets to the ocean. I saw my boy watching the news and trying to decide what kind of man his mother was. I made a choice that felt less like a choice and more like dropping a weight I'd been carrying without knowing it. I reached back, grabbed a rock, and threw it toward the spur road where the men's voices were thinning. It hit somewhere stupid and loud. The voices stopped, then moved that way. I took the trail cam that faced the cave and turned it toward the ground with a single twist. I dragged a branch over my own tracks and folded the brush the way deer do when they don't want to be seen. I took one page from my field notes, the one with the loop sketched in pencil, and I touched it to the stove lighter I'd shoved in my coat. Fire took it like it had always been hoping to meet it. I watched the ash drift and then smeared it into dirt. I knelt and looked into the cave one more time. The eye watched me. I lifted my palm to my chest and then toward the shape. A slow nod came back. No drama, no miracle light, just two beings deciding not to make a fearful choice. I backed away until the cave was a shadow again and the voices were gone. In the dark behind me, a sound rose. A near word. It could have been echo. It could have been intent. I understood it anyway. Go. I went. Morning made everything look smaller until it didn't. The hunters had moved on, but their smell was in the road dust. I walked the loop like a responsible liar. My hands shook less. The forest held a different kind of quiet, not fear, more like watchfulness after a birth in a herd. I went to the hollow. Strength lived there, not loud, not proud. Movement that didn't shiver. Watchful eyes that did not flinch at me, only moved when they needed to see if I had brought harm. I set water near the entrance, berries in a small heap, and a strip of smoked fish I had in the fridge that tasted like last fall. I did not go closer. My body had learned the right distance. Respect makes a tape measure you can feel. Days passed. Not many. Enough. We fell into a routine that made no sense on paper and every kind of sense in the world. I brought water, berries, fish when I had it. I cut a sapling and carved a crutch with my pocket knife, hands cramped from the angle. I stripped the bark and smoothed the places where hands would want to sit. I left it near the cave without looking inside. The next day it was gone from where I left it, and a faint track of use sat like a smile in the dirt. Sometimes I heard echo words that felt like my own thoughts said back to me with a different mouth. Safe. No hurt. They came like breath. I didn't write them down. I wrote cloud cover, light rain at dusk, juncos early. When I got home, I took those pages out, fed them to the stove, and watched the edges curl. I told myself this was to protect the thing in the cave. I knew it was also to protect the person I was becoming. Curiosity had stepped aside for something else. Protection. A parent feeling without a child to put it in. I have a son, yes, but he is grown, carrying his own air with him to places I will never stand. This was different. This was older. The world tried to come back in. Tire ruts appeared on the spur road that didn't belong to the neighbors. A rumor bloomed in town like a nasty weed after rain. Bigfoot sighting near the ridge, they said with a grin, leaning toward the wrong kind of hope. Strangers asked odd questions at the diner. Did the ravens act weird? Does the creek turn a different color when they are near? They, as if saying the word would make them sound drunk. Tom sent me a look over the counter that said, "Don't bring your good self into this noise." I paid for salt and a box of nails and left the door open long enough for the bell to ring twice without meaning to. I escalated my own risk without drama. I destroyed what little evidence I had mistakenly gathered. I took the tin from the cupboard and walked it out past the altar and buried it under a stone I couldn't lift without swearing. I moved the trail cams into positions that would catch faces of men and the license plates of trucks and miss the bodies of those who didn't ask for a camera. I stashed supplies off trail, wrapped in old feed sacks to keep them dull. I changed my porch light habit. Off when it would usually be on when it would usually be off. Small signals to a thing that probably read the world better than I ever would. One evening I heard laughter near the old landing. Not fun laughter, the kind that comes out of a mouth that wants to take something. I stood in the dark of my porch and held the rifle I keep for the truth you don't want but might one day need. I didn't take the safety off. I just felt the weight and the balance. A shot cracked later from the wrong direction, too close to the hidden space. Then silence so hard it rang. I didn't sleep. I sat in a chair at the window and did not blink until the first thin light made the trees gray instead of black. In the morning, there was a mark on a cedar near the trailhead. High, a long, shallow scrape that bled sap like slow tears. Next to it, lower, a smaller mark shaped by human fingers. I put my palm against the bark. Sticky, clean. A strange peace moved through me. Not happy, but settled. I left a clean bucket of water by that cedar and walked away without looking back, like you do when you drop off a gift on a porch and don't want the person to feel watched. Time passed the way it does when you stop asking it to do tricks. Weeks slid into a month. Fog came and went. The creek kept its clock. The ridge learned new weather and kept the old. The root cave emptied one day in the way of things that heal and move on. The crutch leaned against a stump for a while, then vanished, and I stopped looking for it without admitting I had been looking. Strangers stopped coming by the diner so much. The talk shifted back to roofs and trout and whose dog had found religion and stopped chasing deer. The ruts on the spur road filled with rain and held sky. I walked softer. I found I liked that. I talked less in town. I liked that too. Silence stopped being a punishment and became a kind of respect I could offer the hills. I kept small rituals no one asked me to keep. I placed clean water by a certain cedar when I filled the bird bath, or when I went to check the fence and came back by a different route. I left nothing that could tie anything to me. No ribbon, no note, no human noise, just water that any creature could drink. I chose gentleness in small ways no one saw. I let a spider keep a corner of the window. I stocked the storehouse for a winter I might not see. I answered Eli's calls without putting worry into my voice. He felt it anyway because he is his father's son and my son too, tuned to things I don't say. He asked once if I was okay. I said, "I'm learning." He said, "Me too." We sat there on the line breathing together for a while like people who have been in the same kind of smoke. One morning, after a rain that washed the night clean but left the smell of it tucked under logs, I found something on the porch. Not a package. A bundle of wild herbs tied with grass. Pain, sleep, breath. Anyone who has spent nights in the woods knows those plants, knows where they prefer to grow and why, and knows how long you have to walk to gather them without taking too much. There was no note, no footprints I could keep in a photograph and show a person who needs proof to make their mouth close. There was just the bundle. I stood there with the mug cooling in my hands and felt something inside me straighten like a sapling that had carried ice all night and decided it could stand after all. I do not tell this as proof. I do not tell it as bait for the worst kind of curiosity. I am telling it because there is a difference between secrecy that protects and silence that rots a person from the inside. There is a line in the woods that people cross when they believe everything belongs to them. I've crossed lines in my life, some of them good, some of them not. This time, the line I crossed was away from a part of myself that wanted to be right more than it wanted to be kind. I have been asked, by myself most of all, if I should have called someone. The authorities. The biologists with grants and big nets, and a wish to put names on things until the names make them small enough to carry. I think about that when I cannot sleep. I think about it when I hear a heavy step on needles and know it is a bear or a person or a thing that does not need my definition. Then I remember the eye in the cave and the near word in the dark and the way the crutch leaned for a while and then was gone. I think about the shot from the wrong direction and the men who laugh when they hunt and how little we deserve what we are most eager to possess. I think about my husband's bend in the road and the weather log with his neat hand and how he trusted the world to tell him the truth if he listened right. I think about my son's voice on Sunday evenings, tired in a way that is not defeat, and how he does work that takes and gives in the same hour and calls it a day. I think about being a steward and how that word is small and fierce and enough. If you are waiting for proof, you won't get it here. If you need a photograph to sit still in your head, this will not soothe you. If you need a footprint cast in plaster, you can buy one on the internet and tell yourself a story. What I have is not evidence. It is meaning. It is water by a cedar and a bundle of herbs on a porch and an eye in a cave that did not flinch when I came close with iodine and shaking hands. It is a choice made in seconds with consequences that are still unspooling. It is a near word that sounded like go and also like stay. On certain mornings when the first light comes through the fog, the world holds its breath just long enough for me to hear the timberline speak in that long note again. Not a word, but shaped like one. A bent sapling straightens in a breeze that didn't exist a second ago. The creek throws a faint ripple the wrong way, as if something large passed below the surface before dawn, leaving only the politest evidence. I listen. The woods feel alive in a way they did before Mark died, and in a new way too. I am not healed. I am not broken in the same places. I am quiet. I am not alone. Here is my closing truth, and it is simple. Some lives we protect by naming and counting and mapping until they fill a field guide and a database. Some lives we protect by shutting up and stepping aside and leaving clean water by a cedar where anyone can drink. The hills do not belong to me. The creek does not say my name. The thing I helped did not become my friend or my story to sell. It became a part of the place I love. That is enough. If you come here hunting, I hope the forest teaches you a better reason to walk under its branches. If you come here to prove something, I hope your camera fails and your heart succeeds. If you come here because you are lonely and think the world might fill that space, it won't. But it might take your loneliness and turn it into something steadier, like respect. I place water by the cedar. I take nothing that is not mine. I listen for the creek to keep the time. When the wind moves through the timberline in that single long breath, almost a word, I answer in the only way that fits the scale of the thing. I stay small. I stay kind. I keep the secret that isn't mine like a gift I was given to pass along without ever telling the name on the tag. And in that keeping, the woods feel honest again, and so do I.